In this recording, I want to show how to handle Adobe Illustrator files in After Effects and also start to introduce a little bit about how to work with the graph editor in After Effects for in-betweening your keyframes and creating acceleration or deceleration to your animation. All right, I've got an Adobe Illustrator file out here on my desktop that I'm going to use of the Del Taco logo, my favorite fast food restaurant. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. File import. And I'm going to bring that into After Effects. Now it is a layered Illustrator file. So when I bring that in, you can see it gives me the layer options. So I'm going to choose layer. There's only one layer in there, so I'll grab that. And I am going to animate the layer, so I'm going to make sure it says layer size instead of document size. Hit OK. So that imports the asset. Now I'll create a composition to do my animation. And I'm going to do a social media portrait orientation composition here. Social media portrait HD, 30 frames a second. And 10-second duration, that's fine. I'm going to call this Illustrator example. And I'll hit OK. All right, so that creates my composition. I'm going to go ahead and drop my logo into the composition. And I'm going to show the scale property by hitting the letter S on the keyboard. And right off the bat here, I'm going to crank up the scale to about 5,000, which normally, when you scale something up much past 100%, it starts to pixelate and look blurry and look pretty bad. And with raster images made up of pixels like Photoshop files, JPEG images, and things like that, there's really not a lot you can do. You can try and hide the pixelation maybe by using blur effects and things like that, but really there's not a lot you can do. But with Illustrator files and EPS files, which are generic vector files, they're based on objects and they're resolution independent or scalable. And to take advantage of that, all you have to do is click this switch right here called the Collapse Transformation and Continuously Rasterize switch. This switch actually does a couple different things. In the case of precomposed layers, it collapses the transformations and disregards the frame boundaries of the nested comp. And I covered that in one of the precomposing videos that's on the playlist. But in the case of Illustrator files, when we click that switch, you can see what it does. It basically recalculates the raster for each frame. Because keep in mind, After Effects is a raster program. That means that the output from After Effects are pixel-based images or frames of video. So when you click that switch, it tells it to recalculate the raster image based on that vector file for every single frame instead of just doing it once on the first frame. So pretty big difference there. Anyway, that's the key point right there. If you're using Illustrator files or Illustrator layers in your compositions, and especially if you're scaling them up past 100%, you want to click that switch. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a simple little animation here, animating the scale. I'm going to go 3 seconds forward, and I'm going to bring my scale value down to about maybe 200. So I've got two scale keyframes, 1 times 0 with a value of 5,000, and then I've got one at 3 seconds with a value of about 200. I'll set my work area, hit play, see how it looks. All right, well, it could look better, right? By default, these keyframes are what we call linear keyframes. That means that it's a constant rate of change from one keyframe to the next. And there's a way of being able to see that. It's called the graph editor. If we click on our property, click on this button right here to display the graph editor. When we look at our keyframes in this graph editor view, we can view it using two different kinds of graphs. And there's a little button right here next to this eyeball where you can choose the graph type. So there are two different kinds of graphs there. There's what's called the value graph, and there's what's called the speed graph. Those are the two different graphs. Use the value graph for any property that does not have a motion path. So that's going to be scale, rotation, opacity, and a lot of your effect properties as well. You use the speed graph for properties that have motion paths. So that's going to be position, anchor point, and some of your effect properties, things like center point values. So in the case of scale, though, we want to be looking at the value graph. That way, what we see is a graph where the y-axis is the value of the scale, and the x-axis is time. So we can see we have 1 point on the graph at time 0 with a value of 5,000. We have 1 point on the graph at 3 seconds with a value of 200, and it's a straight line connecting them. So again, this is why these are called linear keyframes, because on the graph, it's a constant rate of change, or a straight line from one value to the next. So how do we create a feeling of accelerating or decelerating in or out of a keyframe value? We can do that a number of ways, and the easiest way to get started with it is by using the presets called Easy Ease In or Easy Ease Out. So for example, if I select this first keyframe on the graph, and I go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, here's our presets, Easy Ease In, and Easy Ease Out. And the difference between the three is which side of the keyframe it's going to add the ease to. On Easy Ease, it does both sides of the keyframe. On Ease In, it just does the incoming or left-hand side of the keyframe. And on Easy Ease Out, it just does the right-hand side or outgoing value of the keyframe. So for that first keyframe, I'm going to do Easy Ease Out. And on the graph, you can see that it adds a Bezier curve handle to the outgoing side of that keyframe. And I can use that Bezier curve handle to control the curvature of that in-between line. Now, if I want maximum control over this curve, I'll add a handle to the incoming side of this keyframe right here by selecting it, choosing Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and putting in Easy Ease In on that keyframe. Now I've got control on both sides of the graph, or of this in-between, I should say. So in this case, I want it to maybe ramp down to the smaller size quicker. So it's basically, going fast at first and then slower here as it eases in at the end. I'll go ahead and preview, tapping the spacebar, and see how that looks. So when you're getting started with animation in this program, experiment with the graph editor. Scale is an easy property to try it out on because you're just dealing with the value graph. There's no motion path involved. And so that's pretty straightforward. Now, if I exit the graph editor and look at the keyframes, you'll see that the side of the keyframe that has the curve, that has the Bezier handle on the graph, that side of the keyframe has a curved shape now instead of the linear, diamond shape. Now, if you do want to remove the curves and reset it back to being linear, all you have to do is select the keyframe, command click it until it goes back to the little diamond shape. So command click it a couple times until it goes back to the diamond shape. Now I'll explain what that round keyframe is in a future exercise. That's what's called an auto Bezier keyframe, and there are situations where we want to use that, but this is not one of them. All right, looking at the graph, you can see it went back to a straight line, back to linear. Now you can add the Easy Ease adjustment to keyframes directly on the keyframe. You don't have to be in the graph. You can actually just right-click on the keyframe to shortcut to the Keyframe Assistant, and then you can add your Easy Ease In or Easy Ease Out, or Easy Ease if you want to do both sides of the keyframe. And then, like I said, if you want to go into the graph and drag the handles around to control how it's in-betweening, that's basically how you do it. All right, to finish this little animation here, I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. I'm going to add a white color card behind my logo. I'm going to go to Layer, New, Solid. I'm going to make a solid white color card to put behind it, making the comp size like that. I'll put that underneath the logo. And then one other little trick here I wanted to show, just for fun here. You know, this is a useful thing sometimes if you want to be able to recolor a logo and don't want to have to go back to the Illustrator file to do it. Like, let's say I just wanted to give the logo a monochromatic treatment here. I could select my layer, go to Effect, Color Correction, and add a hue saturation adjustment. And in the effect controls, put the lightness at -100. So that basically turns it into a black silhouette. Then I'll go to Effect, Color Correction, Tint. And that gives me a map black value that I can click on, and then I can choose a new color. So if I am trying to give it just an overall, you know, color treatment without having to go back to the Illustrator file, that's an easy way to do it. All right, hope this helps get you started with using the graph editor, as well as introducing the continuously rasterized switch for preserving that vector scalability when you're using Illustrator files, because we do not ever want to see edges that look like this in our work. All right, I'll see you in the next video.